Hey guys, welcome to Brothers Talk Boxing. My name's Luke Wolf.
I'm Ben Wolf, and we're going to be breaking down the Canelo-Callum Smith fight a little bit, talking about what it means, talking about what's going to be next for Canelo, and then we're going to be delving into our pound-for-pound list a little bit.
All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me make sure I switch it over this time. Yeah. All right. Make this a little bit bigger. And sorry, this is the Spanish version. We couldn't get the zone working there. But this is starting off in the second round, which was actually one of Callum Smith's last good rounds.
Yeah. He didn't have much success after the first couple rounds. It wasn't as much of because of Callum Smith. It was just,
it wasn't lack of trying.
Yeah, Canelo was just great that night.
Yeah.
As we've talked about, he just keeps improving every fight. We've talked about it. We don't really see anybody in those weight classes around Canelo right now, 160, 168, maybe even 175, that are going to be a serious challenge for Canelo.
Like with the fight right here, we see, which we talked about this on Fight Night, Callum Smith, I mean, why is he on his front foot?
Yeah.
You know, and he did this the whole fight.
Yeah, a 7-inch height advantage and an 8-inch reach advantage.
I mean, why?
Yeah.
And, you know, I do respect a little bit the fact that he's throwing some right hands and stuff behind it, trying to, like, you know, keep him off of him. But I'm like, hey, these first, like, round or two at least, I mean, go ahead and just use your jab. You know, work behind it, rack some rounds up. I don't know what that advertisement is right there. But we'll skip ahead here a little bit. I'm not sure what round that was. It's round 3. See, I mean, Canelo's so fast. I mean, he's landing that jab so easy because he's fighting on his front foot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah, when you have that type of height and reach advantage, you really want to see your guy pulling his weight to the back foot,
and
because you don't want to present that easy on a target for a much smaller guy like Canelo. I mean, and with as quick of hands as he has, like Luke's mentioned, I mean, that's less distance for that punch to travel, you know?
And get off the ropes, man.
Yeah.
I mean, work laterally.
You do not want to be laying on the ropes against Canelo.
See, this is, skipped ahead a little bit to round 5. This is really where, like, Canelo just starts taking over.
Yeah.
4 kind of started now it's the Canelo show. And these middle rounds were, see, he's on the ropes again. And those body shots really, later into the fight, just started.
And as we talked about, you know, we found out after the fight, even the shots that Smith was blocking on the ropes, he was catching a lot on the arms, and we found out after the fight that Canelo was actually doing that intentionally. It bruised Smith's arm really badly to where he couldn't really throw his left hook as well as he wanted to, and that was one of Callum Smith's best shots. So that was a big factor. Another reason why Callum Smith should have tried to avoid being on the ropes at all costs.
Mm-hmm. And see, I mean, with Canelo's head forward like that, I mean, you really just need to put your weight on your back foot and jab.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just try to win some rounds. Put some rounds away.
You know, it makes you wonder, too. Now, I don't think this is the only reason, because I've seen Callum Smith fight before, and I just think it's generally his style and it's his stance. I think he's a 6'3" fighter with a long reach who just happens to sit a lot on his front foot. But also, I will say, part of the reason he might be on that front foot is Canelo is a fearsome body puncher.
Yeah.
So that could be part of the reason why he's forward and it's always got those arms like this. But
I'm gonna skip ahead to some of these later rounds. He really starts in these later rounds, just starts like laying on the ropes a lot. I mean, he's tired, but you know. Another thing that we mentioned, I mean, I can't understand these guys. My Spanish is pretty spotty, but remember the American announcers, you know, round 10 was when they really started saying that the fight should be stopped. Now, I didn't agree with that, at least from a ref's perspective, you know. But
and we saw the trainer for Callum Smith. I forget what round it was, but in between one of the rounds, he told Callum Smith he was going to stop it if he didn't have a good round. But as we talked about, that was more him just motivating his fighter than I think him really seriously considering it.
We won't watch too much more of this, but this is rounds 10 through 12 is really just where you started seeing Canelo just walking forward. Not too much stress there. It kind of reminds me of the the demeanor that Triple G had in that last fight. What was that, like last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that?
That's what's amazing when we want to talk about the greatness of Canelo. Canelo, he's essentially changed his whole fighting style. Yeah. When he started out his career, and for many years, he was a slick counterpuncher. Max Kellerman used to always say he fought a lot like James Toney.
Yep.
Well, now the last few fights, he is a pressure fighter coming forward, and he's walking down much bigger guys and just being the fearsome puncher. And that's truly amazing to see him be able to have multiple different styles like that and execute them so well.
So it doesn't show the 12th round, but guess we can move on now. What do you think's next for Canelo after this fight?
He's got some options at 168. I think the two fights people have talked about at that weight class for him is Caleb Plant and then David Benavidez. I think you agree with me. David Benavidez is probably, I think, would be the better fight. I think Caleb Plant, he's a slick boxer, but to be honest, I just don't see him giving a lot of problems, Canelo.
I think if you're Canelo's team, his promoter, I think that Caleb Plant might be the smarter fight for Canelo just because it's a big name. I think he wins it, though. I think he would have more trouble.
I would agree with that.
But I think that, like I said, Plant would be the easier fight for him. But, again, it is a big name for him to beat. The other option that I think we've mentioned before was, him dropping back down in weight. I don't see him doing that. I also just don't think that's wise.
Yeah, I think the only fight I can see him dropping back down to 164 is Triple G.
Yep.
And surprisingly, after the Callum Smith fight, he did seem open to giving Triple G the third fight. So,
personally, I'm a huge Triple G fan. I'm not really interested in seeing it. But it might happen.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of boxing fans out there that want it. I'm just personally not interested in seeing it just because of Triple G's age. I thought he got robbed in the first fight. I know not everybody agrees with me on that, but I really think he did. I had Triple G winning by maybe a round in the second fight, but I do not think it's unreasonable to think that Canelo won that second fight.
Yeah, it could have won either way.
It was a really good fight. The first one, not so much in my opinion. But I'm just personally not really interested in seeing another one. And also, for Canelo, you got to just wonder, is that really the smart move? He's having so much, success at this weight class. Is that really, the smart move? For him, and we've seen fighters in the past drop back down after going up, and sometimes it just doesn't do well for them. They're just not able to take punches or
Kell Brook, a recent example of that. Cutting back down to 147. I think it seriously did a job on his chin ability to take a punch, basically. We saw that again in the fight against Crawford.
Yep.
Now, what do you think of a fight against Charlo?
I really like that. I think that you'd mentioned before too. I think I'd heard. Didn't Charlo say that he would even come up to 168 to fight him? Especially if that happens, I think it'd be a good fight. One thing that I think equalizes it for Charlo a little bit that some of the other fighters haven't had, especially at 168. Charlo is fast, very athletic fighter. And he's had a lot of good fights. He's fought good people, so it's not.
And his last fight against Derevchenko, we were talking about that. That was a solid win.
Yeah.
And he, as we said, he might have beat Derevchenko more convincingly than Triple G or Jacobs.
Yep.
I mean, that's a tough out. So he's certainly, it wouldn't be an easy fight for Canelo.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, especially at 168, I think it would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If I could pick one fight for Canelo, I think that would be what I would want to see, personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be the most interesting fight for me at that weight class.
I'll take that. I think what I would say is that'd probably be number 2 on my list. If I had to pick one that I most want to see, it would probably be the Benavidez fight.
That's fair.
You know, there's a lot of people around the game that rave about Benavidez' talent, and we've talked about it. It seems like he might not always have the focus there. You know, he's lost a title on the scales. He's lost a title because of a drug test. But, I mean, you can't deny the talent, and he could give a serious test to Canelo if he's turned on and he's focused. So I think that is probably the fight, just by a hair, that I would like to see the most, and then Charlo right after that one.
Yep, I agree. There are definitely some decent fights for him at like 168.
Yeah.
So, you know, in my opinion, if he's smart, I would stay there until, you know, you really start having some issues. I just think it's much smarter, you know, from a promoting Canelo perspective.
Yeah.
But kind of follow up to all this, where does this fight, really his last 2 fights, where does this kind of leave Canelo for you, like pound for pound list and everything?
You know, to me, it's clear cut. I have Canelo as my number 1, and it's not even close. I have flirted with that for a while. I had Lomachenko as my number 1 for a long time. Obviously, he lost to Teofimo Lopez, so he's dropped a decent bit in the pound for pound list. But to me, at this point, I don't see how someone could not have him number 1. He just has the best resume in boxing,
especially in recent history.
He really does.
Within the last 3 or 4 years, even with, given the fact that I think he lost the first Triple G fight, I still have him number 1 pound for pound right now.
Yeah.
You know, what did he start at? 147, I think. For him to go beat Kovalev, granted an older Kovalev, but I don't like the people that just completely take that one away from him.
Yeah. I mean,
it was an older Kovalev. I mean, it wasn't the Kovalev of 5 years ago, but it was a good win. For you to start at 147 and then go knock a guy out that was a good fighter at 175.
Kovalev used to be a top 3 pound for pound fighter himself. So, I mean, like you said, even though you factor in the age factor with Kovalev, I mean, they don't grow top 3 pound for pound fighters on trees. So it's an impressive win no matter what.
Yep.
So I agree with you on that point for sure. Basically, to round out my pound for pound list, I would have Canelo number 1. I actually would have Inoue, the Japanese fighter, number 2. He's impressive. I mean, he's got a resume to go with it, and then, as they say, the eye test for him is off the charts. I have Crawford number 3. There's still some people that have Crawford number 1. I don't see it. The eye test is great. He looks good all the time. He doesn't fight. He hasn't fought great fighters like Canelo and Inoue have, in my opinion. I want to see him fight Spence or even fight Sean Porter. That fight's there to be made. Porter wants it. Crawford hasn't really mentioned much about it. And then to round it out, I have Spence at 4, right behind Crawford, nipping at his heels because I think the Garcia win for Spence was really good. And then at 5, I would actually have Teofimo Lopez because that win over Lomachenko was, incredible.
I won't probably go top 5 like you did. I'm still a little bit shaky on some of those guys, but number 1 for me definitely is Canelo. Just especially in recent history, and just him being able to move up in weight like he did, and I thought he lost the first Triple G fight pretty handily, but he came back in the second fight and did what he needed to do. People told him, hey, you need to come forward, be a little bit more aggressive, and somebody that hits as hard as Triple G does, to go do it. I mean, I still thought it was a close fight. But I mean, that was amazing. And then to keep going up in weight, go knock out Kovalev, have a very decisive win against Callum Smith, who's a good fighter.
Yeah.
At a weight class that really, if you'd asked me 3 years ago, if he was going to fight there, I would have been like, he's just going to get bodied by everybody in that weight class, and he hasn't. I mean, he's shown that. I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I would have to agree. Anyways, up there. Gosh, man, his power kind of reminds me a little bit of Pacquiao, but just a better fighter.
Yeah, he's much more refined. He's a very skilled technical
And I don't want to say that Pacquiao's not a good fighter.
Yeah, he's a legend.
I don't want to say better fighter. Pacquiao just kind of, you know, he comes forward more. I think we talked about the different type of fighters. Maybe we can talk about that in another video. Pacquiao's more of like a swarmer. But, you know, anyway, he has the power, but he boxes.
He's very
really
slick.
Boxes.
So,
you know,
you see he had an amateur background when you watch him fight.
Yeah, he's very impressive. And then Crawford, you know, I really want to put him up there, but it's just, you know, the Spence fight didn't happen when it really needed to. He just doesn't have the resume that some of those guys do. Even Lomachenko, you know, if Lomachenko were to come back, and I definitely, it would have been between Lomachenko and Canelo for me, number 1, number 2, if he'd won against Lopez.
Yeah.
It would have been hard to pick, honestly. I do think that that Lomachenko goes back up that list a little bit. If I can see him go fight Lopez again and beat him, or if he can beat like Gervonta Davis or somebody that's a big puncher like that again. But it was a little bit disappointing to see, you know, those first 4 or 5 rounds against Lopez.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I can't have him top 5 right now just because of that.
No.
It was interesting. Was not expecting that. So I still have a lot of respect for him. I'm curious to see what he does moving forward, though.
Me as well.
So that was my top 5, not really top 5. So there's some good ones, 2 through 5 for me, but Canelo's definitely number 1. So I think that's gonna wrap up our session. Unless you have any final thoughts on the pound for pound list or Canelo.
I don't. I would just like to see Terrence Crawford fight some live bodies. If he does, he'll move up.
Yeah, I mean, he might be in the number 1 spot if he can go beat Spence and maybe one other good person.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't even have to be Spence. I'll take Porter. Or
Porter would be
Ugas. You know,
yep.
That'd be a good fight. So
it'll be interesting to see what some of these top 5 pound for pound guys that we're talking about do moving forward in the next 1 to 2 years. So
absolutely.
There's some good fights coming up too. Ryan Garcia is a good one
versus Luke Campbell.
Yep. So there's some good ones moving forward that we'll have some videos on as well. And then I think we're also planning one talking a little bit about some of the judging and just the different governing bodies and how they're kind of, you know, in my opinion, hurting boxing a little bit. So we'll be talking about that in future videos. Thanks for watching our video. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. And I think that we talked about putting this on Spotify, maybe the iTunes for podcasts. I'm trying to put a couple of these on some podcasting platforms as well so that you guys can listen if you don't have access to YouTube. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and check out our videos coming out in the next couple weeks.